So Bitcoin is sitting at one of the most important levels of this entire cycle. The monthly chart is showing a potential head and shoulders pattern, and depending on what happens right here, we either see a deeper move towards 50k or the beginning of a massive expansion that could eventually send Bitcoin into six-figure territory. Now on the weekly, price has tapped into a fair value gap at 96k and rejected. So whilst we're compressing above support, there is potentially a structure that's forming that could easily trap the breakout buyers before sweeping the liquidity below. So in this video, we will break down our current trading positions and everything going on around Bitcoin. If you want real-time entries, stop loss updates, and live trade management, make sure you're subscribed and join the free Telegram below. Because when a macro pattern like this resolves, it doesn't move slowly. This is Bitcoin on point. So let's begin with the bullish macro backdrop. Now, El Salvador have just announced they are launching a Bitcoin bank. So this is by far from speculation. It's in fact a direct infrastructure adjustment. It's a sovereign nation building financial rails around Bitcoin. So they're not restricting it, they're actually integrating it. Huge. Now at the same time, JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon has said that stablecoin yields must follow the same rules as traditional bank interest payments. Now this tells us one thing. And it's that crypto isn't being ignored anymore. It's actually being pulled into the regulated financial system. It's maturity. It's not suppression. Now, when you combine that with the cycle structure we're seeing on the chart here, every major Bitcoin cycle has followed the same pattern: accumulation, breakout, and exponential expansion. 2017 hit 20k, 2021 hit 69k, 2024/5 broke 100k, and if the exponential curve here continues to expand like it has historically, projections towards $300,000 are not irrational. They're actually structurally aligned, with prior cycles. So while short-term price is consolidating and people are debating resistance levels, just simply zoom out. Nations are building banks around Bitcoin. Traditional finance is adapting to crypto yield structures, and the macro environment is evidently shifting from speculation to direct integration. That's usually not the end of a cycle, it's usually the beginning of another expansion phase. So with that wrapped up on the macro, let's dive into our technicals, and we will begin with Bitcoin on the monthly time frame and analyzing this head and shoulders formation. Now, when we actually break down a inverse head and shoulders formation, what we typically see is a left shoulder build followed by a deeper head to mark a major correction, a rally up into the same neckline that then allows us to create a right shoulder. So if Bitcoin is respecting this formation, we've already formed the left shoulder. We've got the head, which is the lows from November 2022. And right now we're potentially forming that right shoulder as support before looking for the massive breakout. Now, how you actually monitor the target is simply by going from the neckline of the inverse head and shoulders back down to the head. And then you drag this up to wherever the breakout would be, right? We've got this white neckline, which is the inverse head and shoulders neckline, the main level of resistance to break. And whenever it happens in the future, if Bitcoin does tap out of this level, the breakout target for this head and shoulders pattern sits towards sort of 600k. Now, again, this is a target to monitor for a lot further down the line, but we can't ignore the structure here. Now, we've spoke about 50k, between sort of 60 and 50k, marking that macro low to confirm the right shoulder here to look for the continued breakout to much, much higher targets. So we've seen multiple points of resistance on this box before, and also multiple levels where it's flipped into support. Now, we did break out last in August of 2024, which saw a rally into the neckline before a correction, and then another point of contact into this trend line, the neckline of the head and shoulders, to meet it as resistance. So what I'm trying to say here is there's many points of resistance and many points of support in this zone. We're coming back from an all-time high, looking to hold this area as support. If Bitcoin was underneath it and hitting its head on it, that wouldn't look great. But the fact that we've retraced back down to it, looking to turn it into support for continuation of this right shoulder, signifies we could be looking for major expansion. However, before this potential does unfold, again, it is a macro play. Let's dive into the weekly. Now, there's a structure here that, again, does signify we may see a sweep back down to 50K. So let's dive in and break this down a little more. We did have a rejection at 96K in the past, which was after a local low followed by some relief. Now, what you'll notice is we did have again, a continued structure down, followed by this sort of rising channel or rising wedge, which eventually tapped out at 96K. It trapped the buyers and then continued the trajectory down to 60K. Now, whilst we're at this 60K level, there is a good chance, right? There is a good chance that we repeat this scenario where we've come down to a low, we form this sort of rising channel or rising wedge, we push back up to sort of 70, 75K, trap the buyers thinking we're getting out of the woods here, and then get a final sweep down into that 50K liquidity pocket. Remember, when we zoom out to the right shoulder formation, the lower end of this green box does sit down in that 50K territory. So if we do fail to break out above 70K in the coming weeks and we do get some relief, that might not be the position or time to mark the low. We could see one final drop back down to 50K before looking for a bullish macro reversal. Now, with that being said, our current weekly support to invalidate the 50K scenario and actually mark a low here sits at 65K. But again, there is that 75K roadblock above that we would need to break to look for further confirmational signals. So again, we may just be rinse repeating a potential scenario. We may get some relief heading into March and April, but if we fail to break back above 75K, which is the previous level of support that could act as resistance from April of 2025, then that's where things could get ugly. And again, we may sweep down to the lower end of the right shoulder formation before looking for that giga expansion. So I hope you're with me, right? The main resistance to break is sort of 75K at the moment. The key level of support we have is 62K. Failing that, if we do get this trap and trap the buyers before a further liquidity sweep, then a 50K low is a massive potential. Now let's head into the daily. Now the daily just kind of identifies the major level of resistance, and you can see that we've got this descending level as well where we keep rejecting. And yesterday we said we were looking for a rally up into 68K, sorry, before meeting this resistance once again. Again, you can see multiple points of contact on this trend line in the past throughout February where Bitcoin just keeps getting rejected. And it's the same again from the last couple of days. We expected it, we've ran into the resistance, and now we're seeing the pullback. But again, I wouldn't fear, because right below is that liquidity and it sits at 62K. And this is the direction we was looking for if we got the resistance point back on 68K. So we've got that resistance point. We've ran back up into that block. We're seeing that rejection. If Bitcoin fails to hold this ascending level of support, which it does have here on the daily, you can see that we have these lows that are building. We may get really compressed inside this range before actually making a decision. So we could see some further relief up to 68K. I do apologize. If we break through that and hold it as support, that's a potential sign to say we're looking to break out of the woods sooner. However, if Bitcoin does come back down, lose this ascending support and push any deeper, that 62K liquidity waits below. And again, this is an area in the past where bulls have stepped in, and it could be an area for major sort of demand or relief, as we say. Now, so wrapping up Bitcoin, the monthly is showing a potential inverse head and shoulders pattern, a bullish reversal structure. The weekly says that we may get a trap, trapping in the buyers up to a 75K rally. And if we fail to break that, it may guide entry towards 50K to mark a low. The daily is showing significant resistance that Bitcoin needs to break, identifying major selling pressure. And that's kind of wrapped. That's it for now. We're simply range bound, waiting for decisions, but macro structures are unfolding that could guide way to major Bitcoin targets. Now let's take this over to our trading environment, and we're going to analyze. Let's look at Link first, actually, as well. So Link did move higher, right? But I protected this trade. I eventually moved the stop loss up to a break even, and eventually what we saw here was no capital loss. We protected it. We preserved our capital. And it's just simply discipline. We win some, we lose some, and we move on, right? However, now looking into Ethereum, this is our second trade, and this is where we're currently active. We're inside this ETH trade. So when Link started weakening, we did say there was no point in trying to go for a long on Link if we're looking to go short on ETH. We need to see some correlation here. Now, ETH did rally back up into an area of interest. So we got back into our position. We missed it in the past. We waited, we did get the bullish confirmation, but it entered into the area where we've seen rejection in the past, and this is why we're back inside this structure. So the structure is bearish, and there's clear downside liquidity below, sitting at 17.8K. So $1,780, which is right around where our take profit is. So if that gets taken, this could be a strong continuation move. Now our stop loss does remain unchanged for this trade, so the risk is managed, the plan is clear, and there's no emotions in this setup. Now, if you do want to keep up with the environment, we're running a trading challenge from $10,000 to $100,000 using the Profits Precision dashboard for complete transparency. We're sitting at $1,100 in net profit, and we've got a 60% win rate. Guys, we're active in this environment. Our last trade was $565 on a Bitcoin setup, and we're always capitalizing. So if you want to get involved, make sure you head over, subscribe to the channel, and join the community. Head over and join the free Telegram. The link is in the description. It's where I share all my entries, stop losses, and trading executions for all these environments. Again, Bitcoin might be volatile, but we are here capitalizing regardless of the situation. Again, make sure you subscribe, join the community by heading over to the Telegram, and use Profits Precision to monitor all of your trade setups. There's 30 days free access, and it's also connected in the description. All of the best, guys. I'll see you in the next update.